use my time more productively now that I spend so much time in Hyderabad and come and talk to you more. Because many of the things you said, I don't know whether it's today or you're older than me. When I say similar things, people say you're very bold. I don't know what's so bold about saying that many of the things he said. Uh, you know, so I don't really know where to begin. Repair the economy. Uh, Many of you here have heard me before. So perhaps what I'll do is I'll tell you the story of, quickly, I have 45 minutes. I'll tell you the story of why we are where we are, in my view, which is different from most people's view. Why it cannot be fixed, because this is Hyderabad and, South India, and you don't have any humanities education here anymore, all STEM. Why it cannot be fixed through a technical fix. When I was on the board of the IAS Academy in Missouri, I used to teach there. I discovered that I interacted in the early batches, it's about 99 batch to about 2011 batch. Discovered that about 74% of them were engineers. So the few non-engineers I met, they would call these engineers circuits. So I said, why do you call them circuits? So no, because whenever they see a public policy problem, they're looking what circuit is broken, like the electrician who came to my house today. And let's fix that circuit. That is what I call the technocratic solution to almost everything mentality, which is very easy to do because it's like opium. If everything was to be able to be fixed technocratically, then you wouldn't have to worry about politics or society. So the second thing I want to tell you, what I want to explore is why we are in this mess that cannot be fixed purely technocratically. And then I will tell you what I think the solution is. But because I'm a technocrat, my solution sounds simple and appealing to technocrats, and I might ruffle a few feathers on at least one topic, given the preponderance of the military in this city. But the solutions to many of the things I'm proposing actually lie in fixing non-technocratic stuff, and I'm not at all sure how that can be fixed. I'm not an expert on society or sociology. So here goes. Let me start by talking about myself growing up in India in the late 80s, when I was in my early 20s. So in my early 20s, in my opinion, in retrospect, many of you are my age or older, you'll remember, I hope you'll agree. I mean, forget all this, it was very peaceful and the environment was good. It was a very boring country, okay? Nothing happened here. I mean, you got up in the morning, you went to school, you went to college, you came back, you ate the same food. And you had basically 3 or 4 outs in life. The best out was to get the hell out of this country because it was a dirty game. The second out was you get into a gated community called the Indian Armed Forces. All right, the gated community, it doesn't matter, you go there. Third out was you join the people who ran the country and took reins from it, and that is called the Government of India. And so there were 3 basic outs if you were a good boy and you had done well. And there were some other scammy outs where you could make a serious money and do well. I should have done that. I didn't know I was not a good boy till then. Like become a lawyer or something. That was solid money, solid political power, real estate, that kind of thing. But those are like, high risk, high reward occupations. I was a good middle class boy, didn't have the guts. So, I took the first out. Bar jao. I can come back and pontificate, but first go out, make some money, then come back. Okay. All this profoundly changes with Dr. Manmohan Singh's advent. I don't know where, Hyderabad. Okay. P.V. Narasimha Rao's advent. Okay. Let's not get into that. Somebody who I don't know was responsible for changing the direction of the Indian economy. Okay. PVNR. Chalo. And that direction change, which happened actually when I was abroad, and I made a big mistake going when I did. I didn't know this was going to happen. Led to a profound change in the lives of many people like us in this room. And I can say this with certainty, yes, that all of us belong to the top 10% at least of the Indian population by prosperity, income and wealth. At least 10%, top 10%. Okay? Our lives changed dramatically for the better all through from 1991 till very recently. Our lives, and for those who produced children in 1994, those children's lives too. Up to about, I'd say, 2008, kids born up to 2006, 2008, their lives were better. This was, of course, in line with the record of Indian prosperity, mark my words, Indian prosperity. since independence. Because since independence, unless you were unfortunate enough to live in Bihar or something, it was quite likely, highly likely, that your life would be more prosperous than that of your parents. And your children's lives would be more prosperous than yours. Right? For the first time, coming today, I keep telling my students this, I feel very bad for them, very bad for them. For the first time in my adult life and in the contemporary history of India, I cannot say this. I can go into this in the discussion, but there's a 70 to 80% probability, even if you're born in the top 10% of the population, that your life as a young child in this country, aged 16 plus up to 22, 23, will be less prosperous than that of your parents if you do not have virasat, which is the Hindi word for legacy wealth. I'm sure most of your children do, thanks to you. So they're very lucky, they're very blessed. But it's, if you have a house in Jubilee Hills, your child is okay. But for all the people whose children don't have a house in Jubilee Hills, or in Picket at least, they're going to have a worse life than their parents. So it's going to be. So how did we come to this cycle, this story of my life and the story of my country from 1991 to now? Let's focus on the nice things that happened to my contemporaries since 1991. I'll tell you in a very simple way. So in 1988, I got my first job. A lecturer in a college in a central government university called Delhi University. That job is the equivalent of a sub-divisional magistrate class 1 UPSC. Whatever, there's a whole bunch of class 1 jobs, So the SDM then saddles, the IAS goes up. But when you're 22 and you get that job, you get, it's sort of entry-level class 1 government job. Lieutenant in the army, sub-lieutenant in the navy, SDM. That was 3,000 rupees a month. Just had a pay commission. Now, 3,000 rupees a month, if I wanted to buy a car, it would have cost me 3.5 years' salary. Okay? This is important. It's not difficult to understand. If I wanted to buy an AC, it would cost me 1 year's salary. 1 year's salary. One khatara, wo voltas, khatar AC. Okay? And if I wanted to buy an air ticket from Bombay to Delhi, it would cost me 2 months' salary. I remember that very well. I'm from Bombay. 7,000 rupees. That's what a ticket would cost. Return ticket. Indian Airlines, it was, I think, called. Yeah. They gave you earbuds, I remember. And there was no business class. Very quaint. Interesting life. So, that was me. Fast forward to the 6th pay commission. Forget the 7th. Or fast forward to today. Why don't we do that? So, today, somebody entering that same entry-level job earns 60,000 rupees a month at least. CTC. A Maruti car, the cheapest one, costs about 3.5 lakhs. That's 6 months' salary. From 3.5 years' salary to 6 months' salary. An AC you can buy in 20 days' salary. Entry-level government, same. Okay? Counter for counter. And an air ticket from Bombay to Delhi still costs 7,000 rupees on a good day. After 34 years. Just see how prices have moved to favor us. We had a massive movement in relative prices that actually fueled Indian economic growth story and prosperity, which was aided, of course, by liberalization, because some khachar public sector Indian Airlines type of airline would never have been able to handle this. So quite correctly, it expanded. Or MTNL, whatever it was called, I don't remember. Executive Engineer, North 2, Oblique 1, all that is gone. You get this process. Yeah? You get multiple airlines, you get fast-moving consumer goods, right? 9 brands of shampoo, 15 brands of whiskey, all sorts of things that you and I consume come out. Nice little package, dal packets, no dirty packets anymore for us. And all these things, the relative prices and wages moved in such a way that other opportunities began to open. If you worked in the areas where relative prices had moved in our favor, you got paid accordingly. And when you got paid accordingly, you demanded more of those things. And that led to a massive explosion in Indian prosperity between 1991 and about 2016, I'd say. Demon was a great watershed there, 2016. Roughly, we can quibble about the year, but at least 2016. Not later than that. But that, what I call good times, Vijay Mallya times, was going to end someday. India is a big country. So when I say the top 10% of the Indian population benefited from this, in some measure, more at the top, less at the bottom, I am talking about 150 million people, And that, as somebody once explained to me, is bigger than the entire market of Germany. So you don't really have to bother, I did my thesis on this, with the remaining kachra, 1.2, 1.3. Not immediately, you don't. Because you've got a big market there. You've got 150 million people, they're consuming, they're producing. And so what Dr. Guruswamy was saying was happening between Nasti Wadia and Ambani. The same thing was sort of replicated with us. We began to look for tax breaks for, I remember this long spiel Chidambaram gave in 2007 about removing taxes on pan masala. And then somebody else said, no, you shouldn't have done that. You should have removed taxes on, I think it was sanitary napkins. That has come back into the news now. And so on and so forth. So basically, as he was rightly describing, this process was going on independently of the Ministry of Finance or the government of India, etc. They were facilitating it. Doesn't matter Congress, BJP. They were facilitating it because it was the growth story. But it was the growth story of us. Not everybody. Cut to South India. South India benefited unusually, hugely from this growth story. Because the supply of stuff, other than lobby stuff, corporate stuff, and performance, Nautanki, Mujra, by which there are two things I mean by that. The capital of one is Delhi and the other is Bombay. Though now Hyderabad is coming up. Nautanki Mujra happens where? It happens in the entertainment industry. That's Bollywood for you. And it happens in the media. That's Delhi for you. Okay. So other than Nautanki Mujra, a lot of good money to be made in Nautanki Mujra in my time also. Still is. But there's serious money to be made, especially in media, Nautanki Mujra, in the 1994 to 2010 period. That all happened in North India. So if you look at Noida, you look at that single prosperity center in North India, that was all sort of Nautanki Mujra. And lobbying. Lobbying is big money, serious money. Tens of thousands of crores change hands, rent seeking happens, land permissions are given, licenses, all that game continued. But the business of satisfying the demands of the top 10%, the majority of that action happened in South India, incrementally. Gujarat and Maharashtra were there. They were always there. But Maharashtra moved increasingly to finance. Where did the IT revolution come? First Karnataka, then Hyderabad. Where did the pharmaceutical revolution come? We are rich people. We are top 10%. We like to go to AIG hospital. वो पद्मश्री भी मिलता है. Healthcare. वो BJP आपका MP है ना या वो healthcare क्या? Apollo hospital. You all be MP, right? Secunderabad? BJP? Huh? Oh, Chennai. No, not Virinchi. Who is your MP here, Secunderabad? Isn't he a BJP MP who owns Apollo? He does own Apollo. No, okay, I was told he owns Apollo. Other constituency owns Apollo. Anyway, so you can see that this was a major pharma center. Okay, some Reddy. Okay, we can agree it's a Reddy. So that constituency was Hyderabad. So Hyderabad's wealth came from the public sector earlier, in the 60s, 70s, 80s, and Charminar cigarettes. Poor fellow, and Zinda Talisman, maybe I don't know. But then it became Apollo, Pharma, IT, and then Accenture, and then of course you had the Kerala effect from all my brethren who went to San Diego, made money and came back here and, invested in land. That was a separate story which has gone on and on and on with us. But the demands of you guys, whether it was me guys, whether it was cars or airlines, look at Hyderabad airport, how they anticipated demand. It's outstripped Chennai. In 2 years, it's going to outstrip Bangalore. The fight is all, will Bangalore and Hyderabad be the biggest airports in 10 years? Nobody's talking about Bombay being the biggest airport or whatever they're building in Noida or something. All right. Certainly not Bhubaneswar. All the action is here to meet this demand. So South India prospered. I'm now speaking geographically, on the back of this 10% revolution. But this cannot go on indefinitely. Because when the music stops, see, I grew up in Bombay, so I use a Bollywood analogy. And the music, I think, I said in 2019, when I was at the PMESC, they didn't like it. The music looks like it's going to stop. Now in 2024, I can say it has stopped. When the music stops, you end up like every other country in the world, barring 3 or 4. If you think of prosperity transformation of a country as a movie, this movie normally has a tragic ending. Anarkali mar jati hai. Okay. And let me start with all the tragic endings that have passed us before. Brazil, Argentina, Egypt, Turkey, Philippines, Thailand, all. What is a tragic country? Tragic country means your per capita income goes up to $12,000 to $14,000. We are only at 3,000 now. It goes up, sure. But whatever your per capita income is, whether it's 7,000, 8,000, 12,000, 10,000, you have the same problems in your country that you had when you were a very poor country. You have crime, you have destitution, you have stunting, right? You have various forms of vulnerability to poverty. You have crappy education. You have bad health for a significant majority of your population. And a significant minority of population, what I call the gated minority, the number differs by country, lives a good life. They grumble all the time about the taxes they have to pay to help the rest of them survive in imperfect lives, but they live a good life. In Brazil, the standard way the rich commute, I lived in Brazil for 3 years, in Sao Paulo, is by helicopter. It's going to happen in Bangalore any day now. Somebody's talking already air taxi. When I heard that, I said, we are coming to the sad ending of this movie. That is called what I call and many others call the middle income trap. Where you end up in a place from which also there is no escape. It's a bit like being in Patal Bhairavi. There is no escape from it. Because once you get into a middle income trap, to continue on that virtuous cycle of progress is very difficult. Because structurally, then to make those changes is very difficult, and therefore it is best to avoid getting into such a trap, and we are almost there. So from the point of view of the economy, that has to be repaired. For it to be repaired, I need to worry about, everyone with me so far? You get my fundamental point that our entire prosperity in my lifetime and yours has been one which has involved only our prosperity, top 10%, whether you live in Bihar or UP or South India. That engine of economic prosperity fueling India's progress is now dead. We need to find another engine. Corollary 2, that 150 million prosperity boom led to the kind of fantastic growth in a part of the country, which is South India, peninsular India, but especially South India, that you have seen since 1991. I was born in Hyderabad. It was a beautiful city. It is now an ugly but very prosperous city, right? This was easily the most beautiful city in the world. Actually, it is in India. It is still the most beautiful city in India, except like all of South India, it has become ugly. So, I'll take Hyderabad any day over Bangalore or something. But that prosperity that the South got has led to its own set of problems for the South, which I want to unpack. Since I said I'll take South India in parallel. So first, let's see what we need to do to solve this broken problem for India, that is Bharat. And then we'll talk about South India, because South India has a problem staring at it in the face. And Mohan, you alluded to it. And I'm going to go there, because somebody needs to go there. We have been producing for the top 10%. Obviously, the solution is to expand that prosperity. And every one of those few successful countries in the world, from France to England to South Korea to China, has done what I'm saying. Communists are silly people. You don't expand everyone's prosperity at once. I accept that. You start with the top 10, 15%, then you go to 30, then you go to 40, but you have to go. What the history teaches us is that by saying, you can't redistribute poverty and you must have inequality and things economists like saying, you forget lesson 2 of history, which is most of the time, having got the prosperity of the top 10%, you are not able to expand it to the next 10, next 20, next 30. Note, I'm not using the word poverty. Thank you. The poor in this story are irrelevant. I feel sorry for them. Therefore, you must not have poor, and we are almost there. Our extreme poverty rates are less than 10%. China is less than 1%. Never mind. They'll always be better than us. They're like that smart kid in school. Sab kuch acha karta hai, chhod do. But at least we're less than 10%. That's pretty remarkable for a country which had 60% extreme poverty in 1950. But even if it was, the poor are not the problem, but they're not the solution either. Because the poor can't consume, they can't work, they're probably not educated, they're half starved, they're on the verge of death and vulnerability all the time. What you can do is give them charity, give them subsidy. And try and minimize the number of poor every generation. And we have done a good job on that, I think. But what about the person who earns the minimum wage or twice the minimum wage or 3 times the minimum wage, wherever they live? What about them? Now, here is where I'm again going to say I'm not a communist. I really believe in market-based prosperity. But for that, I also believe you must abolish Victorian charity from our mindset. And Victorian charity is integral to our mindset when we think not of the poor, they deserve that charity, but of people who earn the minimum wage or twice the minimum wage or 3 times the minimum wage. Why am I saying that? I'm saying that because if I earn the minimum wage, I used to have this argument with my UN colleagues all the time. They'd say, oh, we think we should have a universal public education system and a universal public health system. Where do your kids study? All the kids studied in private schools and went to private healthcare. Okay, so there's bullshit about a public system when your child is not there. So, what I want for that person earning 3 times the minimum wage is to have a more modest lifestyle, but a lifestyle that is moving towards mine. And that at the very minimum means that there are 5 things, just 5 things, that this person earning the minimum wage or 2 times the minimum wage or 3 times the minimum wage must be able to buy from the market with the money they earn from their own pocket. No subsidy. No subsidy. And an economic system that does not deliver that is a failed economic system, like India. What are these 5 things? Food, a square meal. When I was at an IPFP, I tried to calculate the cost of a square meal without subsidy. It's impossible. No wonder farmers commit suicide. It is impossible to calculate what the true cost of a square meal is. And this is important because I like farmers to be prosperous. And that's the other side of the equation. If you're going to have growth, you can't just say, oh, reduce people in agriculture. That's part of the story. But farmers must make money. They must make 15% return on investment. At least. That was behind the doubling farmers' income idea, by the way. Wo slogan ban gaya wo to. Now you're used to it. So, but how do you do that? You do that by giving the farmer a fair price for what they earn without subsidy. But the poor farmer can't decide what to grow, can't decide when they get water, can't decide when they get bijli, can't decide when it is sold. Some year the farmer makes some money by selling sugar or oil seeds. Government of India gets scared because we start yelling and shouting on TV and then immediately put an export ban or they'll increase imports and they'll screw up his prices. So agriculture is completely failed, although there is vast demand for it because of policy. The first step to fix that was already taken by our Honorable Prime Minister Shriman Narendra Modi. And the Honorable Prime Minister came out with a slogan, if you remember, called doubling farmers' income. Remember that? Don't ask me what happened ever in the lifetime of this government. But doubling farmers' income, the idea was that the farmer should be able to make enough money to sell food at non-subsidized prices. Right. There's a whole blueprint for it sitting in Niti Aayog gathering dust. But we have failed at doing it. So first, let's repair that. Let's fix agriculture and make it a profitable sector. If it's profitable, no doubt less people will work there and we have to find out where they'll work. The second example I give, and I'm embarrassed because my wife says I'll use this too much. Who has heard my shirts example here? 1, 2. Okay, I can do it. 3. Okay, chalo. 4, 5, 6. I'm getting to where I can't say it. Okay, only 7. This shirt of mine cost 3,000 rupees. Okay, it's made for Marks and Spencer. It's totally made in India. Atmanirbhar. I always buy Atmanirbhar. But the guy who's earning the minimum wage also wants to buy shirts, right? But they want to buy shirts. They want to buy shirts for 3,000 rupees. They'll buy shirts for 300 rupees. They're available in the market. Where do you think those are made? Vietnam and Bangladesh. 82% of those shirts are imported. So this country can make shirts for me, but can't make shirts for Vietnam for that 3 minimum wage, 2 minimum wage person. That whole import demand is gone, and we're going for 20 years. Nobody cares. I can tell you why later in the question and answer. But that's the second sector I need to repair. Make shirts for people who earn the minimum wage in your country. Without subsidy. No PLI, no subsidy. I said before, without subsidy. Why can't you make shirts? If Bangladesh can make shirts and send them to India and make a profit on it, why can't you? If there are reasons, tell me. That's where government comes in. That's where thinking comes in. We can fix it. But we must want to fix it. Third, housing. I don't understand all this Pradhan Mantri Awas and charity business. I can go into detail in the discussion on this. But housing, if I'm earning the minimum wage or twice the minimum wage, I want to build a house that costs 5 lakhs or 10 lakhs. Why can't I go to the bank and get EMI to build it? Why do I need Awas and charity and bribery and IAS and all that coming in? I just want to go to the bank like you. You buy a house, whatever, Oxford Heights or, Manikonda Hills or, whatever, Picket Dreams for 50 lakhs, 1 crore, 2 crores. What do? You take your family wealth half, then you go to the bank half, EMI, BMI, all that, right? They can't do that. Now, somebody will tell me there is some NBFC, but please, the scale is not there. The scale at which we buy housing, taking EMIs in the market without subsidy, that scale is not available at the 5 lakh, 10 lakh, 15 lakh segment, which is what people earning once, twice, 3 times the minimum wage can afford. One house in their lifetime. The fourth is education. Education is a complex failure. I won't go into it. I don't think it's all about affordability. But I think we need to fix a problem. We need to convince people that they want to be educated. I don't think Indians want education. Take it up in the discussion. And that's a major failure. They want credentials, they want skills, they want jobs, they want many things. But education, as I understand the word, I don't think most Indians have a demand for. And then people don't want to die and want to live a reasonably healthy life. So they should be able to go and afford healthcare. Now, whether you provide it publicly or privately, that's a design question. But collectively, India should be able to provide affordable healthcare for everybody, whether it's the public or private sector, right? So these 5 things that people earning the minimum wage want to buy but cannot buy. If you can't buy these 5 things with the money you make, then something is seriously wrong with the economy. Now take a scenario where, it sounds very good, but there are issues here. These 5 things that people earning, this is about half the Indian population, not the whole, only half, earning the minimum wage, twice the minimum wage, 3 times the minimum wage, can actually buy from their own pockets without subsidy. Imagine that these constitute 60% of tomorrow's growth. 20% comes from people like us, 20-25. All right? All this now, what we consume now. So what constitutes today the leading indicators of the Indian economy? Because food is not. 300 rupee shirts is not. It's all FMCG, air travel, indigo. Yes, this froth will be 20%. And 20%, this is a dream because, if I was sitting in an audience of economists or Dilliwalas, people say, what about exports? And I can only tell you exports. Mahatma Gandhi once said when he was asked about Western civilization, what do you think of Western civilization? He said it would be a very good idea. So what do you think of India as an export powerhouse? I think it would be a very good idea. मेरी जिंदगी में ना हुआ है ना. The only time we tried to export, we did something so pathetic. So when you export something, go and ask the Chinese. They export. The Chinese export because what they export, they can sell to their population also at competitive prices. You can't beat China in what they're exporting in their own home market. Right? So if you produce properly for your home market, you'll export automatically. Instead of that, again, this is Indian mentality. We decided, let's create a small enclave. In that enclave, let's put land and capital. Let's suspend human rights. Let's suspend labor laws. Let's call them SEZs. Pura fail 100%. Remember SEZs? Show me one successful SEZ. Now 20 years I've seen that farcical nonsense going on. Show me one SEZ that works. I mean, there are a lot of scams going on. There's one going on in this city. Just go to Gachibowli. But one that actually functions and produces output for exports at volume. One SEZ. People don't like talking about all this. Then they look here and there. But all people would give me all this gas 20 years ago. SEZs will transform Indian exports. Nothing will transform your exports if you don't improve productivity. And improving productivity means working at scale. And working at scale is not what we do because we only produce for 10% of our population. Okay? So, and we produce IT. I don't want to talk about IT today. The papers are enough proof to us that hamari auqat kya hai IT mein. Good proof you've got with AI coming in and all that. Okay? India is the low end of the IT system. was at the low end of the IT system, and if you don't change it, I'm not an expert, will be at the low end. It would be again a good idea if we could produce, what is it called? Deep fake. Huh. Something like that. What we produce, according to Surjit Bhalla, is a deep state. But we could possibly produce a deep fake IT system. So these 5 things, if the structure of economy changed, then you would get a pathway to prosperity, which would avoid the middle income trap. Now, I've done my job as a macroeconomist. Only one question remains to be asked as a macroeconomist. What will happen to jobs? Jobs are not created except by Sarkari Babus. UPSC creates jobs. It's the only job creating machine in this country. All right? Activities create jobs. And the 5 things I've outlined are not going to be affected by AI, capital intensity, nothing. They are all jobful. Agriculture is jobful. Producing shirts at scale, 300 rupee shirts is jobful. Textiles are very labor intensive. Construction and the housing industry is jobful. Education is jobful. Health is jobful. Your employment problem is not a standalone problem to be solved. It's a consequence of the structure of the economy and what you produce. If you can alter that structure to produce the things that people want to consume, you have solved the problem of jobs. So jobs is solved if we change the economic structure. Here I should say goodbye and end my lecture, but I'm not going to, because I'm not a technocrat. If I was a technocrat, I'd stop here. Circuit maine band kar di. But I'm not a technocrat. So there are problems in doing all this. Let me start with our own region, South India. Telling somebody in Tamil Nadu, somebody quite senior, said, your biggest curse is you're part of the Union of India. Why am I saying that to them? As an economist, you love your flag, okay. But as an economist, see, for an economy like Tamil Nadu or Kerala, Telangana almost, Telangana is a little more complicated, but which has a per capita income which is close to the next poorest country in the G20, which is Indonesia. Remember, I used to say this when I used to work and I used to go abroad, and our embassies would get very hassled with me. I'd say India is an important country in the G20, like Dharavi is an important part of Bombay. We are the biggest slum in the G20. Okay, we are not rich. We are really poor, but there are lots of poor people. Lots. So we have to be in the G20. Chalo. So we are in the G20. So second poorest, second slum is Indonesia. And Tamil Nadu, Kerala, Karnataka are now fairly close to that slum's income. $3,000, $3,500 per capita. Okay. But so at that stage, Tamilian household should not be having cooks, drivers and maids. You should be capital intensive in your home. You should be producing transport that looks very different from transport in Khachar parts of India. Like UP or something. You should be able to commute from 200 kilometers away from Chennai into Chennai to be part of, or at least here Perumbudur, to be part of a larger workforce. Right? You're also a high manufacturing state. None of these conditions obtain in Tamil Nadu, and that is because they have constant access to cheap labor from the north, including the manufacturing sector in Tamil Nadu. Okay? So South India is suffering. Now, how does South India is not suffering. South India is becoming part of that same middle income trap, except they can't see it. How do you solve this problem? I'll give you one example. You could solve, and I'll give you examples on all 5 I've said. I can only give you thoughts on education, but I can certainly talk about construction. I'm going to pick up textiles. So when I saw this 300 rupee thing happening, I went and asked people in Tirupur, whether we have 2 big textile hubs at Tirupur and Vapi, South Gujarat. So you can make these 3,000 rupee shirts. Man, why can't you make 300 rupees? Raise your game, do volume, make some money. I'm from Bombay. You must make money. You must have a desire to make money, not to buy Audis and BMWs and drive them on bad roads. And buy gold or whatever people do with their money. Paise banao. Be like Ambani. So they said wage rates are too high. I said, yeah, sure, wage rates are too high. I'm not asking you to set up this plant in Tirupur. Go to Bihar, go to UP, set them up there, Jharkhand, Bengal. No, they don't have the skills. I said, you're talking nonsense. Your whole shop floor is full of people from Jharkhand and UP and Bihar. I'm not saying you go. How will you live there? You're from Tirupur. You can't go and live in Begusarai or something. You'll go mad. So send this fellow, fund him, do what we all do. Create entrepreneurs. Tamilians were polite. The Gujaratis are rude people. The answer I got, actually indirectly, so I must say a second remove, is, I'll say it in Hindi and translate it, unka swabhav theek nahi hai. They have bad nature. Now, then I said, but if they have bad nature, why do you let them come and work in Surat and in Tirupur? Throw them out, employ Tamilians at 5 times the wage. So no, here we can control them. Because they don't bring their families, right? And I learned this in COVID. It's not as simple as that. Control, I'm caricaturizing. Because suddenly in COVID, they became migrant labor. All of them became same country. Mera Bharat Mahan, all these people give gas. Mera Bharat Mahan has migrant labor in the same country. Which means that there's a complete disjunct between the peninsula, which is prosperous, and the north, which is not prosperous, and be very afraid of this. The per capita income of UP, which is the second poorest state, I don't even want to talk about Bihar, is $900 per capita. It is poorer than Nepal. It is poorer than Nepal. And the per capita income of Tamil Nadu, as I told you, is equivalent to Indonesia. That's the gap. In the history of the world, there have been only 3 countries I have found since World War II, which have had a similar situation where the political power and the majority of people live in the poorer parts. And the richer people and the minority, population-wise, live in the richer, in the richer parts. What I call the Great Indian Plain and the peninsula. So if you think of most countries, look at America. All the rich people live on the coast. The ones who don't like Trump, or didn't until recently. All right, they live on the coast. And all the useless people live in the Rust Belt, South Dakota. Nobody lives there. So the majority of the population lives in prosperous areas, and the minority in less prosperous. Europe, same thing. The action is all in UK, well, it used to be in the UK. France, Germany, Italy, they're G7. And all these sort of less prosperous, all this Greece and Portugal and Ireland, lower populations live there. Again, majority population. I could go on, Japan, any country you look at. So then it's simple. Then you just transfer money from the rich to the poor, and you come up with a political settlement. The 3 countries where this is not true are the former Soviet Union, the former Yugoslavia, which is why I took your point very seriously, and the present Republic of India. So be very afraid about how this can continue. And you can see already in the papers, South Indian states are saying, why are we subsidizing the North? Well, you have to ask yourself, why are you importing labor and capital from the North? Ask yourself, why did UP deindustrialize? There are many interesting questions to ask. It's not a one-sided picture. Unless you want to caricature and say North Indians are lazy, they're backward, then we got to fix it as a country. So I'm out of my comfort zone here. I'm just a technocrat, right? But I'm also open my eyes. I can see this is going on. There's this tension coming up. So it's not going to be that easy to, otherwise you're a technocrat, very simple. Go to the low-wage areas, make 300 rupee shirts, problem solved. I'll just give you an example of the complexity. It's not that easy to solve this problem. It's not that easy to make people come here as migrants. There's a caste system involved. I have some theories. I won't go into them. Let me just tell you that my father's family, moved to Bombay from what is now Bangladesh 110 years ago. Okay. And we were accepted as Maharashtrians. I'm 3rd generation now. Marathi is my first language. There was no problem in our immigration. I'll tell you why, because we were Brahmins. There's interoperability between Brahmins. There's no interoperability between Yadavs. Your social modes, your caste system, all this will come and bite you. There's no point pretending they don't exist and doing economics. Because I know I've seen there are Yadavs here. I saw that festival, big bull came out and all that recently. They have no interoperability bull. I'm saying Yadav, nothing. But I have with Angars, I have with Kanikubs Brahmins, because we have Gotra, we know where Shraddh is done. There are fixed points which Modi likes, where these things are done, right? So Baniyas have interoperability, so they migrate well. The rest of the country doesn't, and that's about 80%. Just to give you a second exemplary flavor of the larger challenge that affects us. I see I have exactly 6 minutes, which is great. There are other institutional challenges which I will just touch upon, which are signals that we are basically, one is social and has to do with us. So there are many responses possible for this. One possible response for this, it's not our fault entirely, because we are passive creatures. We go with the flow. No? We don't have a nice life, watch TV, stare at my wife, that kind of thing. But Educated, civilized people earning a lot of money, as he said, insulated. I just want to touch on that point. That insulation is a choice, but it is also a phenomenon about which there must be consciousness. And there is no consciousness in India whatsoever amongst people like us about this insulation. See, when I was a child, we used to take something called a train. Well, you will all know. I normally address much younger audiences. There's a thing called a train. And that train used to be clean. And you could actually sit in it. And you couldn't still use the toilet. But everything else worked. You got reasonable food. You went. And the train was about fraternity. When, common thing we used to say when we took these long journeys is you didn't feel like getting off the train. When you went from Delhi to Madras or something. Even you traveled in second class, first class, those were different classes. But the point was, you still had to go to the station. You still had to go to the platform. So you met people who were not like you and you shared some experience with them. I don't know what Kachiguda station looks like also. I'm sure it's horrible. I'm sure it's much better than earlier. But I know what Hyderabad airport looks like. And I'm very proud of it. What an airport we have built. What is that word people like to use about Vande Bharat? First world feeling. So we are so satisfied with that first world feeling that we don't want to expand prosperity and be truly first world. So we have a serious intra-elite problem of getting out of our comfort zone and not realizing that we actually live pretty terrible lives. When I was once in Sierra Leone, doing some consultancy there, I told the elites there, I said, I told the Prime Minister, I think we should take them to Kuala Lumpur. Because these elites in Sierra Leone, they have the same facilities as, like we do, elites in Kuala Lumpur. But look at the roads they drive on. Look at the dirty traffic they have. Look at the pollution. Many of you, I'm sure, have SUVs. But what kind of life are you leading in Hyderabad, driving an SUV on some khadka road with bad traffic, noise, pollution, scooters going the wrong way? Much better if you had an SUV in Kuala Lumpur, no? Much better. You have a better life for the same money. So that we have now begun to do what all middle-income trap economies do, which is be very content with the fact that we are rich people in a poor and failed country. So that is one sociological problem we will have to solve. The second, I'd be very interested in your comments on this, Dr. Guruswamy. It came to me that, in a very strange way after coming to Hyderabad, that the Indian state is actually shockingly weak. But we look at the state to be the major agent of change in this country. But the state is so weak. And I'll give you an example. So Kerala is a high per capita income state. Andhra Pradesh is Hyderabad is an emerging metropolis. Right? And I hear big words about it. My friend KTR is very voluble about, how first world feeling Hyderabad is. Okay. So when we go out of this road, I'll take $100, 1 lakh bet with you. We will go out on the main road here and you give me 10 minutes and somebody will drive ulta on a scooter. Okay. So I'll take the same bet in Cochin. I'll take the same bet in Chennai. And second, I'll take a 5 lakh bet that within 3 minutes, there'll be a chap without a helmet. Now, a state that can't even manage two-wheeler traffic, you want them to do big things. See, because Kerala, Telangana, high human development, high income, same behavior as Bihar. So you can't just say, if the income goes up, problem will be solved. The education improves, problem. It will not be solved. It has not been solved. And this is very, very, very important. Taking off my technocratic hat, I realize that these are the binding constraints. You see, because until and unless I am able to find alternatives which are social in nature to the government doing things and asking the government to do things, that unless we are able to take collective social action and change many of these things, you are not going to have a transformation in this country. So I've given you 3 very different examples of one is, so it's not as simplistic as inequality. The South and the North are unequal, but the implications of the inequality are not all good for the South. Please disabuse yourself of that notion if you ever had it. Your lives here are terrible because of that inequality. Okay? And in this context, therefore, it is not surprising to me that the neat solution I gave you is failing. And it's not a conspiracy theory like some people, these are processes. These are gigantic processes that happen in countries. It's not that, Mr. Adani has sat in Ahmedabad and dreamt this up, that only the top 150 million will progress. This has happened since Manmohan Singh. It happened through Vajpayee. It happened through, Narasimha Rao. Till about 2005, 2006, we had a chance to change it. But we never took the steps we needed to change it. But luckily, these things are still correctable. Many of these things are correctable. But the point I'm trying to make to you is that they're not correctable purely through technocratic action. And I say this to you because I'm a technocrat and because so many engineers infest the public policy space. Very often everyone is looking for the circuit that is broken. And they say, let's fix that circuit. Government policy making also does that. You will not believe how empty and bereft and devoid of ideas governments are, including state governments. They have no ideas. Otherwise, you would not see Boston Consulting running most education ministries in this country. You would not see somebody getting impressed by randomized control trial. All I have to do is go and feed some technocratic bump and people get impressed. And that is not going to solve our problem. So to conclude, we had a path of development from 1991. Well, let me start to conclude from the end. I said at the beginning that the most depressing marker of failure of this society, this economy for me as an Indian, is that the children I teach today will, 80% of them, unless they have inherited wealth, will be less prosperous than their parents. I cannot think of a more horrific marker of failure than that, to fail your own children of your country. Second thing I said was this happened because our development path has been based on our prosperity. That engine is over. The third thing I said is there's a way to fix this, and I've given you a technocratic solution. The fourth thing I said with examples, because that's a profound topic, is that solution implemented technocratically will not be enough. And looking at the state to implement a transformation will not be enough. We will need considerable societal change. We will need to do some very close self-examination of how we as the elite approach the problem of prosperity combined and try, therefore, to change the way we address questions of prosperity. Let me conclude with a brief statement from our Constitution. If you've all read the preamble of the Constitution, I'm sure. But, it says liberty, equality, fraternity. The Constitution says that the state shall secure liberty and equality, but it shall work to promote fraternity. And Ambedkar has a beautiful essay on this, which I would commend it to all of you. Ambedkar understood, and the Constitution makers understood, fraternity cannot be brought up by the state. No government servant, no politician can foster fraternity in a society. It has to come from within us. And the divisions I'm talking about, the inequalities I'm talking about, are a function of a low fraternity society. You can blame the caste system. I'm not good enough. I don't know why it's happening. You can say Abdul ko tight karo. You can say caste system is bad. You can say many things. But the multidimensional lack of fraternity in all its respects is, I think, at the root of many of the social problems today. So to summarize the third point, on which I'm not a domain expert, so I've been going into because it's necessary for me to do it, if I'm to be honest with you, is we have to increase the level of fraternity in our society. And until that happens, we are not going to see a happy ending to this movie. Lekin picture abhi baki hai. Thank you.